Annual Veterans Day Assembly. On behalf of the students and faculty, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today to honor those who have served and are serving the United States military. Now would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Now please join me in welcoming the choir who will be performing a few songs.
the orchestra. Veterans Day originated as Armistice Day on November 11, 1918. Its purpose was to commemorate the end of World War I. First proclaimed by Congress as a national holiday in 1938, Armistice Day became Veterans Day and has since been an important day in which to thank veterans who have honorably served their nation in times of war and in peace. There are approximately 23.2 veterans in the United States today. Please join me in watching this video that honors our veterans. Please join me in welcoming Tyrone Milton.
Morning, everybody. I guess I could have came the other way and saved a few steps, but sometimes I make things a little hard. This is my dad. I'm gonna throw your little program off just a little bit. He's actually gonna start, and I didn't know if maybe you wanted to, if that's okay with you guys. Is that right? So I'll let her do a reintroduction.
Okay. I'll introduce myself. Sure, I can. Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Hubert Milton. I used to be called Master Sergeant Milton when I was in the Air Force. One of my jobs, my primary job in the military was something called disaster preparedness. But first let me tell you this about myself. I went into the military when I was 17 years and 10 months old. So how many of you are here? 17 or older. See? Some of you was what I was when I went in. I thought I wanted to be an Oklahoma City policeman, but they wouldn't let me because I wasn't 18 yet, couldn't carry a gun and couldn't do all those things. So I said, let me go to the military first, get out, and come back to Oklahoma City and become a policeman. Well, it didn't happen. I stayed in. I went in 1967, Came out in 1987. While I was there, I became something called a disaster preparedness technician. And one of my jobs was teaching all the branches of the military that was on my particular base how to don, wear the protective gear. Primarily what I was supposedly doing was to help them save themselves in the event that we had a chemical, biological attack on the installation that we were on, or in the area we were on. I also taught people how to fend for themselves in the event that there was a natural disaster. Something that you may be able to relate to, Hurricane Sandy, for instance, which just recently occurred. We taught people how to stay alive in the event of a hurricane, tsunamis, earthquakes, snowstorms, dust storms. All those things is what I did for my time in the military. So that's what I did in the military. I'm what's called a Vietnam-era veteran. One of my secondary jobs was supposed to load bombs for Vietnam in the Vietnam War. What happened to me there, though, was this. I was supposed to go to a place called Cam Ranh Bay on my last assignment in the military, but because of something happening to Cam Ranh Bay, I didn't have to go. Here's what happened. This guy was being born. I got a deferment. And while he was being born, and the time that they gave me to stay at home, the place that I was going was gone. It was during the time of something called, you can ask your parents or whoever you have to ask, perhaps, or read it in a book somewhere. It was something called a Tet Offensive. It was during the time that bombing was real heavy over in Vietnam and all those things were happening. But the base that I was going to, the place that I was going to, was totally wiped out. So what happened, as I said, I got a deferment because he's been born. So I said, you know what, today let's do it this way. I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce you as the person who stopped me from having to go to Vietnam to a place that was totally wiped out. I may not have been here today, had not have been for him, I suppose you could say, or my wife, the way my life went. But military, Vietnam was tough, and certainly we lost many men, many women in the Vietnam War. I want you to always remember things about military, though, as far as most of you, I'll say it this way, most of you probably don't realize that most GIs, be they male or female, go to the military because they do have a sense of dedication to the country and to their families and to you, people such as yourselves. Most of you in here, because you're in something called you're a charter school or preparatory school or what have you, perhaps some of you be in the military, perhaps not. Perhaps some of you will be the officers in charge. I was called a non-commissioned officer, which is an NCO. If ever you're watching TV and see these types of things on TV. I was a non-commissioned officer. I was responsible for managing people. I had, my smallest unit was about 20 people under my rulership, or however you want to call it. But again, we had a classroom setting. Sometimes I had auditoriums, but I taught everybody on the installation how to stay alive. Most of the time I had people who weren't willing to pay attention until I would say something like, if you don't learn how to don or wear your protective gear, your mask, your M17 mask, your M40 mask, your M50 mask, learn how to use MREs. Do any of you know what an MRE is, per chance? MREs, meals ready to eat. I had a warehouse bigger than this school that had all that kind of stuff in it. Mobile hospitals, MREs, water, hospital supplies, and all those types of things. Because during my time in the military, 1967, I was in from 1967 to 1987. So I guess I'm as old as your grandfathers, most of you. And during that time, we had all kinds of different issues that we would have to address in the United States. The mass and the training and the equipment that I was responsible to teach people how to wear, we found out later, some of it did not work. So I'm hoping that because of education and the systems that we're incorporating today in the United States, the way that we're going in our education, we're learning how not to put those false pretenses out there that you are able to do things. For instance, I taught something called, as I said earlier, the M17 protective mask. They wear suits that they would put on and keep them from being affected by chemical, biological warfare. These chemical things, these things, nuclear, particulates and things that you would breathe in. We found out since the time that I taught that stuff that most of the things that I taught was barely effective, barely would help you. The masks, for instance, the suits that they wore, for instance. We've even went from something called an M9 mask to an M17 mask. The M9 mask wasn't any good. The M17 mask wasn't any good, that we found out. The M17A1 mask wasn't any good. The M17A2 mask wasn't any good. We went to an M40 mask, which is not as good as we thought it was. Now we're at an M50, and it's not as good as it should be. So my plea to you guys to become scientists, and doctors, and researchers. Do your jobs and make sure that we get stuff for the military that works. And I think you will, because you're a very smart group today. Much smarter than we were when we were coming along. But I just hope that you understand that the GIs and military folks that are out there fighting for us are doing the best they can with what they have. On the natural disaster side, I will simply tell you this, and then my son will tell you about what he did. Natural disasters are what they are, natural disasters. And the most recent one, well, here in Oklahoma, we talk tornadoes. And certainly most of you know that if you go to your protective shelters in your facilities, wherever you're at, in this school, I don't know where it is, but it's something, you've had a drill, so you know where to go to protect yourself in a tornado. And some of you probably have Hurricane Sandy on your mind, so you should know this. In hurricanes, generally speaking, you shouldn't have any deaths. None. Zero. You know why? Because during a hurricane, when I was there, and when I gave my instruction to the people in the communities that I served, and I served communities as well. In a hurricane, what you are supposed to do is seek higher ground, get away from the area that's going to be affected. So whenever you hear people talk about, they've told everybody in the city or the community to leave, and they refuse to leave. The people in the community, because they want to stay there and protect their property because they've been there 50 years, 60 years, or 80 years. Know this, there is really very little, if any, reason for anybody to die. Very little, if for any reason, for anybody to die in a hurricane. Because guess what? If they would have heeded the warning that they were given, some cases, I'm not saying this is true for the hurricane that just passed, maybe some people were caught, trapped, whatever. But generally speaking, if you follow all the procedures and look at all the information that's provided on all these disasters, in a hurricane situation, you should not really have many casualties, if any, because everyone should have left the affected area, the area that's going to be affected. Generally speaking, the only person that should be injured in a situation like that are the responders, someone from the responding side, when in the attempt to save something from happening, stop something from happening. So know this, that you have people in here who are going to be affected by tornadoes. And I was going to tell you this so you'll know, because I'll use this as a class as well. We have seasons for things. Hurricane season, we say. Tornado season, we say. We certainly know there are seasons for blizzards and so forth, right? We know that. But let me tell you this, and I believe this, and this is a little political, and I won't get that political. But here's what's happening to our seasons. Our seasons are changing. Now, you figure out why. Ask your parents, your grandparents. Something's causing our seasons to change and to combine themselves. We had a hurricane the other week. We had snow with that, and we had tornadoes with that. So you, and I'm pressing this upon you, figure that out for us. What's causing those things to happen? Why are we getting combined seasons, no single season? We're having tornadoes as last week. But we used to be able to say, tornado season is from here to here. Hurricane season, generally speaking, is from here to here. Right? Blizzards come from here to here. Don't work anymore. So figure that out for us. And hopefully, and I know that you're in here, there's someone in here that's smart enough to figure it out for us old folks. And I pray that you're able to do it. And I thank you for inviting me here today to speak to you. And I do appreciate you supporting the military and all the veterans that we have in the United States of America. Thank you very much.